Hey, welcome back to the channel and back to another video. Got a great one here today. Looks to be great from the Joe Rogan Experience podcast. He and a guest are talking about Barack Obama, and I haven't seen it yet. I started it a few weeks ago, but I wanted to share it with you too. So before we get into the video, if you like this video or get any value of it, please leave me out of it. Please give me a thumbs up. Check out my social media accounts at gmarkphillips. I share different type of content there. And without further ado, let's jump in here.
Matter what's technically legal or illegal. What matters is what people can get away with doing. Like, Obama murdered American citizens with no charges. 2 of them, at least. That is illegal.
Yikes.
That is very clearly illegal.
You're talking about drone strikes.
Yes, it was
suspected.
Well,
terrorists.
it was Anwar al-Awlaki and his son. Now, with the son, who was like 14 or 15, they came back and killed him a few weeks after they killed the father. Now, I believe they claim he was not the target of the drone strike, like that he was just collateral damage. Still, I would argue should be illegal. But most people don't buy that because it's just like seems very obvious that they were trying to take him out. But
remember that, and a lot of people hold Barack Obama. I mean, people who know what's up, right? They know what's up. They know he's no bueno. I mean, he was just basically towed the line for the military-industrial complex, even despite being supposedly a Democrat, right? We don't need to go into it any deeper than that. I was going to make a joke, but it's not even worth it.
Anwar al-Awlaki guy certainly had been radicalized, and I think had sworn allegiance to Al-Qaeda, but he's still an American citizen. And the rules are, if you're an American citizen, are you have to be charged with a crime, and then you get a lawyer in a suit and a judge.
He makes a good point, right? He makes a good point.
In a robe, and 12 people who are like pooled randomly, and they decide if you're guilty of a crime. And by the way, he was in Yemen at the time, but they can charge you and have a trial, and if you don't show up to it, they still, you know what I mean, like convict you of it.
Right.
But there's a whole process. You don't just have the president drop a sky robot on you because he says you're guilty of these crimes. And you know, it's funny when people they'll still talk about Obama be scandal-free administration. You know, what was his biggest scandal? He wore it.
Scandal-free administration, despite the fact that under the Obama administration, and this is horrific because we're seeing it play out right now today in our world. They put together the coup that overthrew or led to the overthrow of the democratically elected government in Ukraine in 2014 and installed a puppet government, and that planted the seeds of what's happening today, the tragedy, the horrific loss of life, and all of it, not to mention the United States sending billions of dollars to Ukraine, which is one of the most corrupt countries in Europe, maybe in the world. I don't know. They are super sketch. If you want to go down a rabbit hole, start looking up what Ukraine is all about. It is wild. I recently did an audio diving into that specific topic. You can find it on my YouTube channel, but Ukraine is no bueno.
Tan suit or something, and you're like, how about them murdering American citizens without charges? That was a pretty big scandal, in my opinion.
And what about the people that got killed by drones that were totally innocent, which is somewhere in the
That's
range
another
of 90%?
factor.
It was over 90%. There was one report that came out about that I think said somewhere in the neighborhood of like 95% of the people killed in drones were collateral damage, were not the targets of the drones. These, you know, people like to think of these things as they call them precision strikes, but like
surgical.
They're not surgical strikes. They're bombs that blow shit up. You know what I mean? And yeah, a lot of innocent people die. And then out of those, it's even higher than that, because what they're counting as the target of the strikes just means you were put on a list, which is not always does not always mean that you were actually a terrorist, because what happens is a lot of times they're working with these groups on the ground. They kind of bribe them to rat out who's a terrorist, but a lot of times those groups are just giving you like their enemy. Right. You know what I mean? Like someone they want to get killed,
just like
or
the
they're
mafia
just coming up with names because they want you to keep bribing
allegedly
them.
doing,
the whole
right?
thing was such a clusterfuck, man. And some of it is still going on to this day, although now we've decided to flirt with an even much more dangerous nuclear war. But yeah, and even the drone bombings weren't the worst of what Obama did. You know, the worst of what he did was overthrowing Muammar Gaddafi in Libya, funding the anti-Assad rebels and starting a civil war in Syria, funding the Saudis and giving them the green light,
wow.
and refueling their fighter jets so they could genocide the people of Yemen for 8 freaking years. That was the worst of it. And just goddamn tragedy.
Dude, he unloaded. I mean, truth. Obama was a stooge for the military-industrial complex. Now, in all fairness, so were the Bushes, right? And as a conservative person, I had to come to terms with that. And the blood of the Middle Eastern people are sadly on my hands. And you know what? That'll never go away. But I got to tell you, I'm very disappointed in liberals and Democrats for not. It seems like some of them are waking up. Let's be honest. Some of them are waking up, but a lot of them are not still. They just, I don't know what it is. And well, I do know what it is. What it is with Democrats is you see, I almost think it's easier for a conservative to wake up and go, oh, this government is corrupt on both sides, because conservatives have always been skeptical of government. I mean, our whole game plan is, you know what, if you want something done right, if you want it done effectively and efficiently, do it yourself or have someone in the private sector do it. Don't use the government. The government is ineffective, inefficient, the whole ball of wax. But see, liberals and Democrats have a different tough go of it, because in many cases, their whole lives are predicated on the idea that government can do it better, government solves problems, government creates change. And so in a way, I feel sorry for Democrats, especially as we move into the advanced stages of corruption in the government, where the government is genuinely turning on the citizens and becoming tyrannical and authoritarian. I do believe that liberals and Democrats are going to be the last ones to wake up to this, because they don't want to see it, right? If your whole life was built upon this idea that government is good and government is for the benefit of the people, having your eyes open to that could really almost cause you to have like a psychological split. But this guy just unloaded on all that truth. Now, to be fair, I think I do believe under President Trump, he was allowing those planes to refuel, or facilitating, helping the planes refuel, the Saudi planes that are just bombing the shit out of Yemen. You know, you want to cry, go look at some pictures of Yemen. But the other thing is that Libya thing, and I'll talk about that in future videos as well too, because I'm really sharing a lot of stuff on that. Heartbreaking. Hillary Clinton and the State Department and the U.S. facilitated the murder of Muammar Gaddafi. And again, if you really start looking into that, you'll see that it was all because he was trying to do good things for Africa and the Libyan people and the African continent, and he was not playing ball with the global bankers, which is what happened, which is what's always the case. Let's finish this video.
Yeah, but he talks so well.
He gave a hell of a speech.
Yeah.
Great president.
He really gave a hell of a
Great
speech.
Statesman.
It's people forget how good he was. The job aged him a lot too. So he wasn't as good at the end as he was at the beginning. But if you go listen to his it's nonsense. It's mostly just like
nonsense,
gooey nothingness. But if you listen to his speech at the 2008 Democratic National Convention, his official acceptance speech, it's just like, it's a master class on public speaking. He would just say these things, even when they were like meaningless. But he would, like, I remember, I'm trying to think if I can remember. He has this thing where he's like, He's like, I love this country, and so do you, and so does John McCain. The men and women who have fought and died in our armed forces have been Democrats and Republicans and independents, but they did not die defending a red America or a blue America. They died defending the United States of America. It's like, but the way he would deliver it, so like, it really just tugs at your like insides and makes you like, God damn. And then after a little while, you walk away and you're like, wait, but what did he say?
Right.
You're like, oh, there was nothing. I mean, it was nothing. It wasn't like,
It's
you know,
true.
like,
That's a
he did say
uniting
some good
thing.
things when he ran, though. He
Yeah.
did. I mean, he
all say
ran
good
on some
things
really
when they
good
ran.
policies, like ending the wars and closing
Didn't do any
Guantanamo
of it.
Bay and repealing the Patriot Act and restoring the rule of law and, you know, ending torture and all.
Yeah.
The shame is he did none of it. And I think that's like, I go back and forth. You could pick like any president really of my lifetime. You'd be like, who ruined the 21st century for America? You could certainly make an argument for George W. Bush and Dick Cheney, but there's something about Obama. I think I put probably more blame than anyone else on him because he was supposed to be the response. And like that's the way this system of government is supposed to work, or so they say, is like, well, we have these democratic processes, you know, so you can you know, if you're upset with these guys, you can kick the bums out and vote for these guys. And obviously, we all know it's like then they narrow it down to two teams, and those two teams happen to have the same policy when it comes to, you know, the military-industrial complex, or the banking-industrial
100%.
complex, or the pharmaceutical-industrial complex. They're all on the same side. So that's how the uniparty works. Like, no matter who you vote in, they're all supposed to be. But the country was so furious with George W. Bush and Dick Cheney, who handed him two disastrous failed wars and the worst financial crisis in 100 years. And they were so furious with them that they voted the most opposite thing they could. You know, this junior senator, constitutional lawyer, brilliant, articulate, you know, everything that was the opposite of George W. Bush. And he was supposed to be the answer. And then he got in and just continued the Bush. Like the Bush administration. It might as well have been the third and fourth term of George W. Bush. And
Same thing with the Patriot Act. I mean, that hurt our country so bad. Obama, I believe he talked about repealing it like this gentleman said, and he didn't do shit, right? There never was any, it was all hollow words.
that is where the country spins out, to me. That's where you end up with Trump.
I bet if you were friends with Obama, if you really were friends with him, if you could have a couple of drinks, maybe spark up a joint and talk to that guy, if he really trusted you and knew you were never going to tell anybody, I bet he could tell you some shit.
Yeah, I bet you're right.
They all could.
I'm more of like a believer in what Putin has said about this when he talks about how he's been through 3 different presidents and they all have these plans.
Yeah.
And he goes, and they get into office and people that are dressed in a suit like mine come in and sit them down and tell them how everything works. If you think about how much access to the real understanding of how the government works is ever going to be given to a junior senator who's running for president, I bet very little. I bet very little. I bet there's no speeches. I bet there's no conversation about it. I think once you get in, once you're in the Pentagon, once you're in the Oval Office, once you're meeting with these people and you realize, like, holy shit, and then you realize this machine behind you that's pushing all the buttons and you're a spokesperson for this machine.
Yeah, wild. Anyway, there it is. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below, and use this opportunity to share what you know about Barack Obama with the rest of us. Thanks as always. Until next time, all the best, health, wealth, and success. Bye-bye.